Imagine getting up every day full of energy as if you were in your 20s again. What would that be like? What would it be worth to you? What is your health worth to you? Think about it. Your health isn't everything, but without it, everything else is nothing. And yet, too many of us are taking it for granted until something goes wrong. And no one wakes up hoping to be diagnosed with a disease or chronic illness. And yet, we've never been taught how to be proactive in our health through our school or public health. As a registered health coach and integrative health practitioner, I believe it's time this information is made available to everyone. Combining new knowledge around your health and the ability to do my functional medicine lab tests in the comfort of your own home will allow you to optimize your health for today and all your tomorrows. Don't wait for your wake-up call. Welcome back to the Don't Wait for Your Wake-Up Call podcast. I am Melissa Deely, the host of the show, and I'm really excited to welcome you to my guest today, Ken Streater. Welcome, Ken.
Howdy, it's great to be here, and I'm excited to see where this takes us.
Me too. So let me just introduce who you are to people as we jump in. Ken Streater shares eye-opening and heartwarming global experiences that reflect our shared dreams and concerns. He has seen firsthand how common ground blooms greater good. From angry hippo showdowns to nuclear missile attacks, from billionaire shenanigans to Siberian soccer wars to quiet conversations with everyday heroes, these and other interactions inspire him to create good change. And of course, you are the host of the Good Change podcast, which you graciously had me on before. So as an international best-selling author, TEDx, and keynote speaker, and social good entrepreneur, Ken's timely work highlights the need for our collective growth and is reflected by Thuplen Jinpa, founder of the Compassion Institute and principal translator to the Dalai Lama. Now more than ever, there is need for people to connect with their better selves and view others and the world through the lenses of shared humanity. Ken Streater's book, Be the Good, helps us to do this and act from such awareness with action steps that can easily be put into effect right now. And I love all of that, be the good, good change, as well as action steps we can implement right away. That's what I try to do with my podcast, and that's why you're here. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you again. Thanks for that great introduction as well.
My pleasure. You have had an incredible background, and I would just love for you to share a little bit of your story as to how you came to this place of recognizing this, shared humanity for the greater good and the work that drives your passion today.
Be happy to do that. I was born and raised in Southern California and quickly realized that wasn't quite the place for me. This was in the early 60s and 70s, and I became a river guide and had the good fortune of working on rivers and playing on rivers and developing friendships and communities in 50 different countries, from Africa to Siberia, Alaska to South America. And in that process, I recognized that, as a river guide, in a team of river guides with groups of people, that teamwork really matters. And B, that in communities throughout the country, there are people who are endeavoring to work together to make their places better. And I've seen that in thriving and threadbare places, from the poorest African communities to the busiest cities on earth. And so I took that experience as a river guide, started my own rafting company, and then had the opportunity to outfit trips with dozens of guides around the world myself. After that, I oddly, and it's a whole other story, but I actually got into commercial real estate. The gist of why is I recognized when I wanted to start a family, my wife and I wanted to start a family, that it probably wasn't conducive to being a good parent to be gone in Southeast Asia or Africa or South America. So we decided to have me change careers, and I got into commercial real estate, which has never been regarded as an industry of compassionate, purpose-driven people. It's largely driven by folks who are trying to make a lot of money and sometimes do it less than ethically. And so I was in that industry for a number of years, and it drove me crazy because outfitting is a fairly noble pursuit where people that you take on rivers or hiking or sea kayaking, their lives are changed as the result of those experiences. And often their families' lives and their friends' lives are changed. And there was nothing to that. There was no part of that in real estate. And I realized I had three choices. One was I could get out, but at this point I had three little kids. And I was making a living at it. Two, I could just go to work pissed off every day. Or three, I could change the way that the industry runs, starting with my company. And so we became a very mission-driven, purposeful company that endeavored to put community before commodity, meaning taking care of others before making money. And lo and behold, that model took hold, and our brokerage grew exponentially. I was a half owner of the brokerage, and it resonated with people. People wanted to be our clients because they believed the same thing, and they didn't know that option existed in commercial real estate brokerage. Mm-hmm. And then during that time, while I was still feeling somewhat empty, I wanted to find something a little bit more purposeful, as I'd felt when I was an outfitter. And so I wrote my first book, The Gift of Courage, and had some great critical acclaim with that book that I'm extremely grateful for. And then I recognized that that's really where a passion lied, was using the skill and the experience that I had to bring people together through writing and speaking. And so that's landed me where we are today with the podcast, the Good Change podcast, with now I'm writing my fourth book, and with having great conversations with people like you about how to manifest change.
I love it. I love every step of that.
and I have too. I've been blessed. It's a remarkable thing to look back and say that I lived the dream. I lived my life as a dream, and then I didn't, and then I hated my life, and then I recomposed, restructured, and now I'm grateful every day for the position I'm in. And
that you recognize that you had a choice, right? You didn't feel stuck. You figured out a way to shift the work that you were doing into being in alignment with your heart-centered person.
Yeah. And that didn't mean I wasn't stuck, because I was. There were many years there where I was stuck, and we were deeply in debt. It was during the downturn, and I would wake up at 2:00 in the morning and toss and turn because we owed $150,000 on credit cards. We were underwater on 3 different investment properties. It was a mess, and I was stuck. And then I said, okay, I've lived in a way, whether that was as a child and I didn't consciously know it, or as a river guide where I was somewhat aware of it, and then definitely as an outfitter, where I said there is a better way to live. And from that stuckness, I took small steps in order to be in the position we're in today. And
that's what it takes, right? Is the small step. When we're stuck, we're not taking any steps, right? So that one step.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or we're falling down. We're not even standing up. We're falling down. And, at one point in my life, I spent 8 straight months, 20 or more hours a day, flat on my back because I had ruptured discs in my back. And so I spent that time wallowing in pity, not even stepping, but really just on my back. But then I used to reflect during that period and at other times in my life on the whole concept of purpose. And I used to be a believer in the idea that you need to really work on discovering your purpose. And that I spent months and years trying to do that, trying to figure out my deep, intense, life-mattering, lifelong purpose. And I didn't find it because I wasn't taking any steps. That was the key, is once I started taking steps, then I began to realize where meaning came in my life.
And so talk to me a little bit about that, because I think the idea of purpose is something that is, the discussion and conversation around that is more prevalent today than ever. And people are questioning, why am I here? What is my purpose on this planet? And how do I figure that out? And I would have to say, in my journey into health and wellness, that I was simply open to being guided, because I didn't know what career was going to be my next career after 24 years with one company and then being let go and given an hour to clear out my desk. And because I was open to being guided, I landed here and then realized, oh my God, this is what I was meant to do. But not everybody does that or takes that approach. And some people like you are like really trying to figure it out. And so where was your aha? What would you suggest for others that are maybe trying to figure it out right now?
So my aha, there were two or three ahas, but one of the main ones was waking up every morning and going for a walk on a quiet country road. And this was in the middle of the maelstrom. This was in the time in my life where the debt issues were huge and I was completely unsatisfied with my life. And I said, I got to do something different. So I would just get up and go for a walk. Mm-hmm. And that allowed my mind to be still, where you're walking in a more or less natural setting and nobody else is around you. It quiets your mind. It stills your mind. And I was just on a call this morning, and I'm going to butcher this phrase, but it was essentially, when your mind is still, life flows through you more powerfully. And so that's what I did. And I don't want to get too touchy-feely on it, but just going for a walk allowed my mind to slow down, for me to really ask questions about what floats my boat. Right. And what really, it's interesting metaphor, rafting metaphor, but what allows me to feel like I'm going with the flow and going downstream and doing so purposefully. So that was the first step. And then the second step, and this is when I had the real big aha moment, because up until that point, remember, I was still struggling with the grand purpose concept, how I have to find my deep life's purpose, and I need to reflect on that in order to find it, which it turned out was not true. What it turned out to be, in order to recognize purpose, was just to do something meaningful every day. Just start by doing a single meaningful thing. And oftentimes, more often than not, that meaningful thing that you're doing either directly positively impacts another in that moment, or what you produce from those meaningful moments will at some point positively impact somebody else. And so that was the big epiphany for me. And a lot of reading about purpose, and then more so about just taking steps.
Right. I love that. And the whole concept of doing something meaningful every day, because when we give to others, it fills us up. And so often when we're in that place of, being pushed down by this fast-paced modern world we lived in, and high stress and high debt, and trying to do the best we can, but it just all feels overwhelming, that we're so hard on ourselves and we're so beaten up inside and feeling, I don't know, I want to just say small or squashed or insignificant, right? But when we take that step to do something meaningful every day, supporting others in some way, it fills us up. And when it fills us up, it allows us to expand. And when we expand, that allows something else to come in, as you said, right?
Right. And you know what? It seems silly on one level, but one of the things that I started doing, in addition to writing was super, super important to me, because I was able to put my thoughts on paper and was writing in a way that I didn't know it at the time, but I believed it would inspire others. And so that's kind of what my books are about. But the other thing I did, and this is how, I guess, simple it is. I don't want to make it sound trivial, but it's really this simple, was I started coaching youth sports. I started coaching first grade boys soccer. My son was in the first grade, and I watched him when he was in the kindergarten and with his team there. And I said, I want to do that. And so that's all I did, was I just started coaching youth soccer. And I discovered when I was doing that, how meaningful it felt. And I kind of additionally formulated my idea about purpose and meaning. And I came to realize that if you engage, if you do something as simple as coach an hour of youth sports 2 or 3 times a week, and that fills you up, but you don't feel like it's necessarily filling you up as much as you could be or would like to be, then you try something else. And eventually, after you've tried half a dozen different things and you've given an hour here and an hour there, 1 or 2 of those things are really going to resonate with you. And so then you do more of that, and you do more of that, and you do more of that, and you build on that, either time-wise or energy-wise or whatever. And before you know it, you recognize this pattern of things that really, really, really matter to you, where they not only matter to you, but you also feel like you matter. And in that discovery is where you find your purpose.
I love that. And I'm thinking about myself as you're talking to that, because I didn't coach soccer because I never played soccer, but I managed the team, right? My husband coached, I managed the team because I naturally have really good organizational skills. And so it was really easy for me to manage the team, but I got to know all the families, I got to know all the girls. And between us coaching and managing, we were able to, deliver a really efficient, soccer program to the families of my daughter's ages. And I loved it. It was easy because it was doing something that I was good at. And I think that's a piece of it too. You probably chose to coach soccer because you knew soccer and that was easier for you. And it was something that you got to do with your son, right? So it's not like you have to go out and learn a whole new skill before you can offer your time and find something meaningful. It's actually think about what you do well naturally.
Right. That is such an important distinction, because if you naturally do it well, and if you then do that, even if it's microscopically in terms of the amount of time that you put into it in a week, it's going to feel natural and rewarding to you because you do it well. And it doesn't mean you have to do it perfectly. And it doesn't mean that you have to spend hours and hours and hours more each week or month getting better at it. It's just recognizing what you do well. In your case, you organize things. You're a great organizer, and you found meaning in being a good organizer by giving of yourself, because you did that, recognizing that you had something to bring to the world because you did it well. And it's not an ego thing. It's just, it feels great when you do that because A, you do it well, and B, you're providing some meaning to people.
Absolutely. And because you do it well, it's not taking too much of my time and it feels easy. So it doesn't feel like, I'm going out of my way to do it. Right.
Yep.
But you do get that reward feeling. I got enjoyment from it. Right.
Yep.
And, just getting to know the other kids of my children's age and their interests. Well, as a parent, you want to know who they are. Right. It just enhances everyone's relationships.
Yeah.
And so the finding that meaningful thing is, find something that relates to your kids, that allows you to spend more time with your kids. So it doesn't have to be something that takes you away from your family.
Right.
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 We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but we all feel like there's never enough time. And so, people could be listening going, well, how do I work this into my schedule? I already don't have enough time for my kids and my family. So do something that allows you to spend more time with.
And a guest that I had on a podcast a while back, his name is Nir Eyal. He's written a couple of books about human behavior. And he says simply that time management is value management, or value management is time management. And so if you don't have enough time in your day and it doesn't feel right, that's because your calendar is not aligning with your values. And it doesn't take much to make that match up better. And I kind of liken it to a bicycle rim, where you've got the hub in the middle of the bicycle rim, and then you've got all these spokes that go out to the outside. And centrifugal force will naturally allow you, if that hub, that wheel is spinning, to get out to the outer edge. And if the outer edge is living a meaningful life, and you're never starting down one of those little spoke routes, then you're just spinning in the hub away from the meaning of your life. You're spinning in the middle of this wheel, but never realizing the essence of the wheel, which is a meaningful life. So all you have to do, and this is exactly what you were just talking about, where you started coaching soccer, is just start up one of those spokes. Just start up one of those spokes. And as long as you're still staying in that spoke, meaning that as long as you keep trying on some level, that eventually the force is going to take you to the outside where your meaning is, and you live then on that part of the wheel.
And that's where you can be in flow as well.
Yeah.
And so that helps with that whole time management, time value thing, because when you're in that flow, you don't even notice time happening because it's so joyful to be there that, an hour might pass by and it feels like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you're doing something that you don't enjoy and you're watching the clock, like that hour feels like 4 hours, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I would just say getting into that flow state is so important at us understanding time and value alignment.
Yep. And using the flow metaphor and the river metaphor, kind of an additional metaphor in addition to the spoken rim metaphor, is that if you are sitting along the side of a river and you are afraid to jump into the river, even though there is absolutely no indication whatsoever that river is going to harm you, if you do not step into the river or jump into the river, you will never be able to go into the flow. So if you're afraid, or if you believe that you don't have enough time or energy, then you're going to remain on the shore. And there's nothing better than that flow experience. And I hearken back to when I was a river guide, and then before that I had a class on religions, world religions in college. And I remember one of the people that were quoted in that class of philosophers said something to the effect of that the true spiritual moment in our lives are when we are so in the here and now that we don't know we're in the here and now. And whether that is writing a book or on a field with 12 little kids, 2 of whom are stopping to pick dandelions and 3 of them are kicking the ball and the rest of them are off on the sidelines saying something silly to each other. When you're in that moment and you don't realize that you're even in that moment, that's the beauty of doing things that are meaningful. And that's where, again, your purpose is realized.
Very, very true. And if you're not willing to step into the river and get into the flow, then you stay stuck on the shore, back to the previous stuck state, right?
Yeah. And the physiological and the psychological ramifications from that are, well, we see it. We see it every day. In your business, you see it every day. Mm-hmm. If people can take care of themselves physiologically, but if they're not adding that extra layer of being in some flow state, at least at some point in their life on a weekly or monthly or even daily basis, then all of the physiological improvements in the world will not allow them to actualize really good, complete health if they're not adding that component to their life.
100%. And not only that, that stuck state actually can cause physiological damage as well, right? And that's when, the stress of it all starts to break down our gut health, cause imbalances, trigger inflammation in the body, and trigger disease, right?
Yeah.
And, that happens and we'll come back and talk to this more, I know, but, I look at people that count down the days until retirement, right? Because unfortunately, they're in a job that they don't love. And you probably know the stats, but I think it's, upwards of 60% of people are completely disengaged in their work and, dread having to go to work every day. And so they're counting down the days to retirement. And then they plan out their first month or so after retirement. And, pre-COVID anyway, there was always travel involved and they want to go do this and they go and do that. And it's all fabulous. And then they come back and now what do they do with their time? They haven't figured out what's meaningful and how to spend their time. And so that starts to lead to boredom.
Yeah.
Boredom starts to actually trigger disease, sickness, and depression often will come first and then disease. And then how many people are actually dying soon after retiring?
Right.
In the Western world. And it's tragic because it doesn't have to be that way. And you know that, and I know that, but let's talk about that.
So that brings up a great point. You and I have talked about the Blue Zones, this book before. And the Blue Zones is a book that is about the highest ratio of centenarians per population. So the highest ratio of 100-year-olds per population. And it's studied, it goes out and the author finds, and his team, they find these different civilization pockets where this is the case, where there's way more 100-year-olds than anywhere else on Earth. and just places like Sardinia and Costa Rica and Loma Linda, California, which is a whole other story, a fascinating story, and Okinawa. These are all places where they have the highest percentage of 100-year-olds per capita. And so then they studied these cultures and they came up with 9 reasons, 9 commonalities from culture to culture, even though they're on very different parts of the planet. And 4 of those are physiologic reasons, like diet and exercise. And exercise doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym, but it means working in a plantation or herding sheep or just doing something where you're active every day. So there's movement. 4. Just movement, critical. Yeah. One of those 4 things is movement. Mm-hmm. And the other is diet and that kind of stuff. Like, surprisingly, red meat in these different societies is considered a delicacy, and very rarely do the people there eat a lot of red meat. The other 4 reasons out of the 9, so you've got 4 physiological, then you have 4 sociological, and those are being connected to other people. And part of that includes being revered as an elder. And these population centers, the elders are highly regarded as opposed to set aside. And then also belonging to a spiritual community, and then having an extended family. So there's the sociologic reasons. And then there's one that doesn't fit into either category. And that in the book is identified as a Japanese word in Okinawa as ikigai. And the translation in the book, and what I've came to apply as the translation, is my reason for waking up every morning. And so you can, going back to what we were talking about before, you can be as physiologically healthy, quote unquote, as you try to be or want to be. And you can even be sociologically rich. But if you don't have a reason for getting up every day, getting back to your point about retirement, then there's a strong likelihood that you won't live to be 100 years old.
Exactly. And I love this research because, first of all, as many listeners know, my grandmother lived to be 101. And she lived at home alone, looking after herself right until she was 101.
Wow.
And so I have good genes, but I know it's about more than just my genes, right? And so I'm looking at all of those pieces because I want to live my life the same way. Mm-hmm. And so what are all of those pieces? And this research really shows us what those pieces are. And it allows me to look back with gratitude at where I'm at today compared to where I was. Because when I was in the corporate world, I had a great career for 22 of the 24 years. Then I got stuck under a horrible boss with, a chip on each shoulder for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then if I was still in that career, then I would have been, looking towards retirement at some point, right? And whereas now in the work that I do, I feel like I have my ikigai, and having grown up in Japan and spent years there, speak the language, I know exactly what ikigai means. And I have my ikigai because I don't have to stop this work ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I help people get to the root cause of what's going on. I help their body come back into balance, at which point it will heal itself. Maybe I'm not going to do it 40 hours a week when I'm 95. Maybe I'm just going to offer, 2 hours a week. But I can still do it.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that sets me up in a massive way to be going down that path of my grandmother and not down that path of the people that are dying soon after retiring, because I don't ever intend to retire.
Yeah.
And I've actually had my financial advisor, when he, did all his stats and he figured out, okay, this is how much money you need. He just put it in as like, the average person dies at 80. So let's factor this out till 80. And my husband and I looked at each other, and my husband said, you got to factor in at least 20 more years on that for her.
Yeah.
Don't put a number on it, right?
Yeah.
And today, unfortunately, too many of us are, it's talking lifespan instead of health span. And we're living shorter, but dying longer. And let's flip that on its head. Let's die shorter, live longer, like my grandmother did. And when we have all of these pieces in place, we can absolutely do that. We just need to know those pieces, right? So it's awesome that you just outlined all of them. very often people are aware, okay, we need to do something with nutrition. They're aware of exercise, but they're not necessarily aware of all those other pieces that are so important. And, community or having your tribe is a big part of that.
Well, and that's what's a fascinating kind of synergistic, positive upwind effect, is that if you individually are healthier, and not just physiologically, but sociologically and emotionally, spiritually, then the benefits that you bring to your community are manyfold greater than if you are not feeling good and you're not engaged. So the benefits of the physiologic health and having a purpose, and the sociological benefits, all of those things add up to you being a more fruitful member of society, member of your community. And then guess what? As the result of you lifting your community, as the result of doing things that matter to you and taking care of yourself, the community gets healthier. And when the community gets healthier, guess what? You get healthier because you're part of that community. So it's this beautiful upward spiral.
Mm-hmm. We rise all boats together, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Coming back to our boating and river rafting analogies, etc. So I love all of that. And so coming back to that meaningful work as well is that time, for people that are retiring and that want to retire and aren't in something that they can do forever, it doesn't mean your life has to come to a standstill.
And if you haven't experienced something in your life, consistently experienced something in your life that brings you joy and provides your life with meaning. And again, my recommendation is to stop, whether you're 20 or 80, to stop beating yourself up to introspectively discover your purpose. My recommendation is that you go out and do something and take that step. And then you go out that bicycle spoke, and before you know it, you're living in a life of meaning. And it may not be that where you started, the spoke that you started ends up being the exit, where you stay on the exit point of the wheel, but you're on the outside.
Exactly.
So if you haven't had the opportunity to experience that kind of joy and meaning, I invite folks to look at it kind of like as a kid stepping onto a playground for maybe the first time ever, where you've got the thing that spins around, and then you got the thing that you can climb on, and then you got the thing that swings back and forth. And when you're a kid and you first step onto that playground, you don't think, oh, I wonder which one of these is going to bring me the most joy. I think I'll try this one first and then that one next. And then analyze the entire playground for all the different pieces of equipment. You just go jump on the thing that looks like it's the most fun. And
right.
That's how you start to build that kind of life.
And probably you try a few of them, at the same time. You don't have to try one and do it for 2 years before you decide to try the other, right?
Try one, and then the whole playground is yours to enjoy.
Exactly. And so, I really invite people to look at their retirement as that time to give back, to figure out what gives you meaning, and spend those years doing that. And now you may have grandchildren, right? Maybe now you're just supporting your kids because they're busy working and they need time with, they don't have as much time with their kids and they're in daycares or whatever it is. Like, how can you support your community? And as you say, try different things, because that's where you discover what brings you the most joy.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be just one thing either.
Yeah. And as you're enjoying those things, getting back to one of the things I said initially is when your mind is quiet. So when you're in the moment, life flows more powerfully through you. And that's the benefit that you bring to your community, is if life is flowing more powerfully through you, the power that offers as it's coming out of you into your community is, in some cases, infinite. And in some cases, you may not even know that how much benefit, how much good you've brought to the community when life is flowing powerfully through you.
Mm-hmm. We never know that ripple effect, the domino effect, right? And how what you do touches one person, that touches 3 people, that touches 9 people, and so on and so forth.
And you may not know the ripple effect, but I've got one quick story here about a rafting trip where I was the river guide, and there was a family of 4 on the trip, and there was the mother and father, and there was about a 10-year-old girl and a 6-year-old boy. And I don't know the impact that I had on this kid's life today. I have no way of knowing. But we got off the raft and we were walking up this trail towards a wilderness lodge on this particular river where you can spend the night. And I write about this in the book that I'm writing. It's one of the most powerful experiences of my life. As I'm walking up this trail, the 6-year-old boy is standing right next to me, and I've known him for 3 days, total of 3 days. And he's walking with me now up the trail, and he just puts his hand in mine. He just wanted to hold my hand. And while you may never know the impact that you have on that ultimate ripple effect, in that moment, whether you're coaching soccer or whether you're a river guide or whether you're reading a book to a child, they'll let you know in the most simply powerful ways imaginable that you're doing something meaningful.
I love that. You gave me full body goosebumps telling that story. And it's just that human connection that's so important, right? And nothing better than a child to show you that, because they don't stop and think about, oh, what's he going to think if I do that? And, analyze it to death beforehand. They just do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful. Right.
It's so powerful and so priceless. And that reinforcement of what you're doing is making a difference.
Yeah.
So,
and how cool for you. I think about the path that you've been on. We've talked about this before. You were a guest on the Good Change podcast, and just how you took it upon yourself by taking small steps, if I remember right, to leave the corporate world. I mean, you basically needed to leave, but then it wasn't like you had been contemplating your purpose for years and years and years, and then just immediately launched into it. You took some steps in order to experience certain things that mattered more to you. And then you recognized that you had a value to bring to people that could help them personally, and then by extension can help their community. And so you're a living proof of kind of this formula that we're talking about today. So my hat's off to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And you're absolutely right. Like, it wasn't thought out at all. I just literally knew in that moment of being let go, 24 years in one career, I knew that this was time for new beginnings. I didn't want to stay in that career. I didn't want to leave my town. And so if I were to stay here and stay in that career, I'd be taking my career backwards 10 years, right? So time for new beginnings. And that I had no idea what that was going to be, but I was open to being guided. And I had, like you, a series of ahas along the way. And I just kept following the ahas. And it's also interesting, I don't know if we ever talked about this, but it's never a linear path, right? Yeah. And so, I've gone through both my girls having concussions. I was working at a wellness clinic that I'd been invited to work at and help other people heal from concussions. And then all of a sudden there was a letter sent to the community about me pretending to be a doctor. And how dare I? And just because I'd had 2 kids with concussions didn't mean that I was in any position to help others. And I was a risk to the community, and the community should shut me down. And it was a kick to my gut, because every single client I worked with knew that I wasn't a doctor. I made sure they knew that I wasn't a doctor, and that I was giving them health education. Mm-hmm. And on that basis, they were still wanting to see me and have my help. And the business owner was with me when I got that email, and he goes, "How does it make you feel?" I said, "Well, it's a kick to the gut, because I'm not pretending to be a doctor." And he goes, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I can either put my tail between my legs and run, or I can think about all the people that I've helped that have given me testimonials so far saying that they were really appreciative of my work, and realize that there are people that need what I'm doing, and I need to keep going." But there was one piece in that letter that was accurate, and that was that I didn't have insurance. And I didn't have insurance because I didn't have any certification. And so all I could do was make sure that I didn't get another letter like that again. And the way I could do that was by making sure I had insurance, because that was the only piece of truth in the entire letter that was talking about what I was doing. that's what led me going back to school to becoming a health coach. I had actually called a friend to say, hey, you're a life coach. I need a certification. I need to get insurance. What's a good life coaching course? What program did you do? And he said to me, you don't need to be a life coach. You need to be a health coach. And I went, what? What's that? And so that was kind of the jag in my path, right? Because I'd never heard of that before. But when I started that program, I jumped in with both feet and I was like, oh my goodness, where has this been all my life? Right? Yeah. I am so passionate about this. And I also realized if the entire world had time to stop doing what they're doing and do this program, the world wouldn't be nearly as sick as it is today. We wouldn't have sickness, right? But not everybody can do that. So I can learn it and then I can teach it to other people.
Yeah.
And that was a really profound, jag in my path that took me in a new direction that I didn't even know was out there.
Yeah. And that's, so two or three things come of that for me. One is that you had the gumption to start down a path, and it was brought about as the result of your daughters having concussions. And so you guided yourself to some extent while being guided by the circumstances.
Yeah.
And then you allowed for what some might have considered to be a traumatic enough event to shut some people down. You allowed for that to guide you in a different direction. And then as you described it, so that's point one. And then the second point is, as you described, is you never saw yourself ending up there, which is again, the outside of that rim. That's a beautiful place to exist, but you started up the spoke and now you're existing on the outside of that rim, which is the meaningful way to live.
Exactly. And so I look back on all of that with extreme gratitude for everything that happened along the way and to being let go. Because if I had never been let go and given an hour to clear out my desk, I wouldn't have landed here at all, right? Because I was in my comfort zone over there. I'd done that for 24 years. I knew what I was doing, love the industry, love the people in the industry. But it took that moment of being let go the way that I was to drive me to something completely different.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of if X then Y approach of comfort zone disruption. But then there's no reason that you can't do something meaningful or purposeful and still be in your comfort zone, which comes back to what you talked about earlier, which is if it's something that you're good at and you're maybe not taking it quite as far out as you could, then it's probably not going to be that uncomfortable to do that thing. And so don't be afraid of it, whether it's A, jolting you out of your comfort zone, or B, allowing you to manifest something different in your life and still be in your comfort zone.
100%. And somewhere along my journey, I was at a conference and I had another aha because the speaker said, we are all put on this planet to do three things. And one of them is to serve humanity. Never stop learning and to find your purpose/passion, right? And I hadn't landed in health coaching yet. It was just before that whole letter incident, etc. But those three things really resonated with me and just helped me keep doing what I was doing, keep working towards the outside of that wheel that you talk towards, right?
Yeah.
Keep taking action.
Yeah.
Because just that statement was meaningful to me. And it wasn't anything I'd ever thought about when I was in the corporate world, right? The corporate world, as much as I, like I said, I love that career, it was still a place where I felt like I was a number and I was churning out work and that's what was demanded of me. And I got paid for 40 hours, but it was really best if I worked 60, right? And just kind of getting used up and churned out.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'd never had time to stop and think about any of that. And so that conference was, a little bit of an aha and that awakening. And then things just unfolded from there. So.
Right on.
Yeah. So I love this conversation with you. We could talk for hours, literally.
Yes, I agree.
But I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
And I'm going to just throw this one at you. I had the great pleasure to travel in Africa before I ever came to Canada, and I got to raft down the Zambezi River. And I'm wondering, what is your favorite river to raft?
So that's $1 million question, and I
was
don't have a
going to
concrete answer. It depends. So I've been on the Zambezi, and that's certainly one of the crazier ones that anybody could go on. Did you do the one-day trip, what they call the wildest one day on Earth?
Yep.
Yeah, there's some literally, I don't know if people can appreciate what that means. So I'm going to describe it a little bit more in detail. There are apartment house sized waves and school bus size reversals or holes on that river. And so to have done that is phenomenal. And my hat's off to you for doing that. I guess there's two categories, and one of the favorite rivers of mine is the Rogue River in Oregon, which is near where I live. Mm-hmm. And it's just because it's a 3 or 4 day stretch of wilderness river with fun whitewater and good scenery. But what it feels like is that you're escaping for a month when you're on that river for mm-hmm. 3 days, and mm-hmm. that's priceless.
Yeah.
And then I would have to say, because of something that just happened, my other favorite river is the Deschutes River right now on my list, because my teenage boy and I did that recently, just did it last summer. And for the first time, he rode his own boat through the biggest rapids. And as a dad with wanting to have kids that feel good about themselves and inspired to do good things, I can still see him running that rapid, and it's such a great feeling. So.
I love that. And those, parent-child moments are priceless. And I also love what you say about the river in Oregon, and just 4 days on the river feels like you've been away for a month, because you're out there in nature, and nature has that healing, calming, tendency when we're in it. Right. And it just slows our whole nervous system. And we're obviously not on devices when we're out on the river, etc. Since COVID, I've been backcountry camping with my daughter a lot, just, in our local area in BC. And same thing, right? You can get out there and you can go on even a 2-night overnight camp, hiking in, hauling everything with you, and come back and feel like you've been gone a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because of that healing value of nature.
The peace of a wild place. That's what I call it. And if you're able to find peace, it can be phenomenally rewarding and definitely recharging. And so that you're exactly right. Finding the peace of a wild place is especially powerful.
And making memories at the same time. Yeah. Love it. So I love to ask all of my guests as we wrap up, what does "don't wait for your wake-up call" mean to you?
Boy, I think this conversation has largely been centered on that, which is take a small step. Take a small step, and don't worry about whether or not it's going to be as completely rewarding or as completely purposeful as you might like it to be, because that small step will lead you in a direction that will make it where you don't feel like you have to be woken up every day. It's where you want to be woken up every day. And so that's my piece of advice: is just take that small step and discover great things in that.
I love that. I love the idea of just wanting to wake up every day. Right.
Yeah.
And so how can people reach you if they want to reach out to you and, learn more about your work? And I know you're also very generously offering a gift to my audience. So if you can please share all of that information as well.
Yeah, so I'll be the guy on the corner of your town with the sandwich board that just says looking for advice, meaning I'd love to get some of your advice. No, I'm just kidding. My website is kenstreater.com, KenStreater.com. And on there, you'll find some links to books and speeches and stuff like that. And I would love for your listeners to take a look at my most recent book, Be the Good, with the subtitle, Becoming a Force for a Better World. It has 20 chapters that are really 20 tangible, easy to implement action items with stories that are related to those action items. And it's normally, I think, $6 ebook form on Amazon. And for your listeners, for the week or so after this show, we'll have it available at $1.99. So all you have to do is go to my website and get the link to Amazon, and then you'll see that your ebook price is $1.99. And I hope you take advantage of that, just because, as we've talked about today, if you try one of those things, one of those 20 items, I think you'll notice a difference in your life and also notice a difference that you're making in your community.
I love that. And I will also put the link in the show notes for people. This episode is coming out December 11th. So for a week after December 11th. So for a week after that, people can get that book for $1.99. And how much value is that? Amazing. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Oh, my pleasure.
Love that.
I just want to say thank you again for all that you're doing and for having me today. And you're making a difference in your community. You're making a difference in the world. And I'm honored to have been on your show.
Well, thank you very much. And it's been wonderful to co-collaborate with you both here on my show and on your show. And is there any last message you want to leave for the audience as we finish off and encouraging them to start their health journey today?
I would say jump on your bandwagon, so to speak. I would say if you're looking for a guide to bring you to a better place health-wise, and not just physically healthy, but all levels, to sign up for what you're providing, to sign up for one of your services, because I've been on the fringes of the personal development and self-help industry for a couple of decades now. And you can tell when certain people are in it for maybe not the most compassionate reasons. You're in it because you're altruistic and because you want to help people without any real need to be buoyed ego-wise or extra flooded with money. And you can just tell that you're a good human with a good soul, and the service that you provide other people would make a big difference in their life. So that's where I start.
Thank you very much. And yes, there's nothing that brings me more joy than guiding people through and having them achieve their health goals. So thank you very much. And thank you to all the listeners. It's been awesome, wonderful conversation, and see you next time.
Thanks a lot.